You described the two classes of energy factories and energy farming. Let's turn to energy farming. Solar, wind, bio, et cetera. I mean, obviously we need a portfolio of all of them. It's not a matter of, there's not a silver bullet and not really a matter of choosing, but when you look at sort of the technological trajectories of those three industries, solar, wind, and bio, which one do you think has the most potential long term?
Well, clearly the one with the most potential is solar electric or solar chemical. All of those things are intermittent sources. That is, they're not 24 hours a day whenever you want them. They are only available at certain locations. The wind doesn't blow everywhere. The sun doesn't shine a lot everywhere. You can't grow things everywhere. And some countries have very little of those nice locations. And so these things are hard. In terms of just the raw physics, the amount of energy that's available for solar is phenomenal. And even though it's wildly expensive, wind has to be subsidized by about a factor of 2, solar by about a factor of 5, and that's only when they're just a small percentage of the power. When they get to be any meaningful percentage, that's where the problem of their intermittency becomes overwhelming. And you can actually spend way more to try and solve that problem than you spend on the overpriced stuff to begin with. But solar, it's hard. With wind, you can actually create a lower bound of what it's likely to cost in terms of the materials and things. With solar, you can imagine that it'll get very cheap. Even today, even if they gave you the panels for free, the installation costs make you non-competitive. Yeah. So you have to think, okay, are there going to be robots? Are there going to be scale for these things? But you can dream about solar electric and solar chemical. And as you said, we should pursue them all. I've got investments in dozens of energy companies. The most interesting portfolio is what Vinod Khosla has in his venture fund. It's quite phenomenal. There's a lot of great companies there. But battery companies, solar chemicals, solar thermal, there's a lot of IQ. And that's really, I think, if you want a leading indicator that you can feel good about, the amount of IQ working on energy today and the kind of tools they have to communicate and simulate versus 20 years ago, it's night and day. Yeah. And so, but it's very unpredictable whether we're going to get a breakthrough or not. And all three of the problems are serious enough that uncertainty makes you think, well, why don't we put more into R&D? How do we encourage that? Why don't we do more pilot type things?
Just to refresh us, the three problems are?
Cost, security, and the environment. So other than the fact it's too expensive, you could get cut off at any time, and you're destroying the planet, it's all okay. Photovoltaic is, its intermittency, I think people deeply underestimate what a huge problem that is if you're trying to design an energy system where PV is more than just a hobby. Right. If you're doing PV as your last 3 or 4%, it's nice, the sun shines during the day, people turn their air conditioners on during the day, it's nice, you can catch some of that peaking load, particularly if you get enough subsidies, and it's cute. You don't take a photo of your coal plant, you take a photo of your few little panels, and it's nice. But the economics are so far from being, in terms of mainstream energy, so far from being appropriate. And that's where subsidies, where do you put the subsidies? Do you put subsidies on R&D, where society always underinvests in basic research? Do you put the subsidies on the deployment? Today, we're putting overwhelmingly 90% of the subsidies are on deployment. This is true in Europe, it's true in the United States, not on the R&D piece.
The three trends in solar. There's the big, utility scale stuff out in the desert. There is the sort of smaller solar installations on office roofs and large commercial spaces, and then there's all the way down to the residential. Each one has its own sort of efficiencies and a lack thereof in terms of generation, but large transmission differences about how to get it onto the grid. Does the one in the home makes no sense in terms of the overall energy generation, but might link up with the electric car and sort of some microgeneration form as local storage. Notions like that. When you look at the big picture of where should we be focusing? Should it be massive stuff in the desert? Sort of middle-sized stuff on office roofs, or is there a reinvention to be made at the home?
If you're going for cuteness, the stuff in the home is the place to go, because it's really kind of cool. You have that little thing on your roof and everything.
Yeah.
If you're interested in the energy problem,
yeah,
it's those big ones in the desert. I mean,
cute is now a pejorative.
Well, the problem is rich countries can afford to overpay for things. We can afford to overpay for medicine. We can overpay for energy. We can rig our food prices. We can overpay for sugar, cotton. It doesn't, our politicians aren't told that we're suffering because we're overpaying for these things. In the world where most people live, 80%, energy is going to be bought where it's economic. And so the rich world is not necessarily the best steward of which solutions are going to work for the world at large. And for the CO2 problem, even if the rich world did very dramatic things, it doesn't come anywhere near to solving the problem. You have to help the rest of the world get energy at a reasonable price in order to have gotten anywhere.